You're lying in bed. The door is shut. The lights are off. Maybe your partner is next to you. Maybe you've got the whole bed to yourself. Either way, the moment is yours. Nobody can see you. Nobody can hear you. You are in the most ordinary way imaginable, completely alone. Now here's something that should genuinely unsettle you a little. That moment, the closed door, the empty dark, the total privacy, almost never happened in human history. For something like 290,000 of our 300,000 years, it basically did not exist. No doors, no walls, no bedrooms. Just you, your family, and 15 to 20 other people sleeping close enough to kick you in the shin if you snored too loud. So how did ancient humans get any privacy at all? The short answer is brutal. They didn't. The long answer is so much more interesting, because it turns out the thing you treat as a basic human right is one of the newest inventions we have. And there's a real argument that getting it is exactly what made us miserable. Let's get into it. Start with the raw reality of the situation, because it's almost hard to picture from inside a private bedroom. For roughly 300,000 years, humans lived in small bands of maybe 15 to 50 people, and these weren't acquaintances. These were your parents, your siblings, your cousins, your in-laws, the guy you'd known since you were both toddlers, and you were physically within arm's reach of all of them, almost all the time. The camp had no walls, no separate rooms, no little nook to disappear into when you needed a minute. You slept in a pile, partly for warmth, partly because there was nowhere else to go. You ate together. You sat around one fire, and the social consequences of this were total. If you've had an argument with your partner, it wasn't a private matter. It was tonight's entertainment for the entire group. If you were in a bad mood, 20 people knew before breakfast. If you and your partner wanted some, let's call it alone time, well, everybody was extremely aware of that too. There was no version of I just need some space. There was no space. Space hadn't been invented yet. So the obvious question, the one everybody actually wants answered, how did couples handle this? Because humans are still here, which means our ancestors were, against all logistical odds, finding ways to make more humans. Anthropologists who've studied modern hunter-gatherer groups found the same workarounds appearing again and again, and they're more clever than you'd think. The first strategy was timing. Most intimate moments happened at night, in the dark, when everyone else was asleep, or, just as often, generously pretending to be asleep. Darkness gave people a kind of psychological privacy even when actual physical privacy was non-existent. If you can't see it, it didn't happen. Everyone agreed to this. Nobody signed anything, but everyone agreed. The second strategy was distance. A couple would simply walk away from camp. But here's the catch that tells you everything about ancient life. They couldn't go far. Because the edge of the firelight was also the edge of safety. And stepping past it meant stepping into a darkness that contained things with teeth. So you walked just far enough to be out of immediate view. 50 feet, maybe. And trusted that 50 feet of darkness was sufficient cover. Romance in the Ice Age was a careful negotiation between the desire for privacy and a reasonable fear of being eaten. Not a problem most of us have to factor in on date night. And the third strategy is the one that actually matters most, and it's the one that survived all the way to you. Social protocol. Everyone simply agreed not to notice. Think about the modern version of this. You're crammed into a tent with your family on a camping trip. Somebody needs to change their clothes. Nobody builds a wall. You just look away. You suddenly become very interested in your shoelaces. You grant a person psychological privacy in a space that offers zero physical privacy, purely through an unspoken agreement to not be weird about it. That's it. That's the technology. Ancient humans didn't invent the wall. They invented the polite decision to pretend they didn't see something. And honestly, we still run almost entirely on that software, which brings us to the most universally wondered about question of all, the bathroom situation. Come on, you were thinking it. Ancient humans had no toilets, no outhouses, no little room with a lock and a scented candle. When nature called, you got up, you walked away from camp, usually to a more or less agreed upon area, ideally downwind, because some lessons humanity learned very early, and you took care of business. And then you walked back. Was it private? By our standards, absolutely not. You were, technically, in view. But here's where that social protocol did the heavy lifting again. People didn't follow you. People didn't watch. Everyone extended the courtesy of aggressively minding their own business and granted you the illusion of privacy through what we might generously call intentional ignorance. If that sounds primitive, I gently point out that this is the exact same system running in every public restroom on Earth right now. There are other people in there. You can hear them. They can hear you. And every single person in that room has entered into a sacred silent agreement that none of it is happening. We didn't evolve past the ancient solution. We just added tile and a hand dryer. So before we go further, I'm genuinely curious. Which country are you watching this from? Drop it in the comments because privacy norms are wildly different around the world and I'd love to see this spread. Now let's talk about sleep because this is where it stops being funny and G and starts being kind of profound. Ancient humans slept in groups and not as a lifestyle choice. They did it because the alternative could kill you. At night, the temperature dropped. Predators came out. The fire needed tending. Sleeping pressed together meant warmth, and warmth meant survival, and a body next to yours meant a warning system if something crept up in the dark. We actually have a remarkable snapshot of this. At a site called Ohalo 2, on the shore of the Sea of Galilee in Israel, archaeologists found the remains of brush huts that are around 23,000 years old. Preserved because the whole site ended up waterlogged, which is the kind of lucky accident archaeology runs on. Inside one of them, they found the oldest known bedding in the world. Plant material laid down in defined spots around a central hearth, with separate areas for sleeping, eating, and working. A real home. And these huts were small, barely big enough for a family to lie down in. Everyone touching. No rolling over without elbowing somebody. No, you're on my side of the bed, because there were no sides. There was just the pile. And here's the part that should rearrange your sense of what's normal and what's new. This didn't end with the Ice Age. It barely ended at all. In medieval Europe, entire families routinely slept in a single room, frequently in a single bed. The idea that a child should have their own bedroom, a whole room, just for them, with a door, is shockingly recent. For most of the world, it didn't become common until the 1900s. Your great-great-grandparents would have found the concept of a private nursery faintly ridiculous, possibly a little decadent. So when did privacy actually show up? When did we get the door? The answer, like the answer to almost everything that went strange about modern human life, is agriculture. Around 10,000 years ago, humans started farming. Farming meant staying put. Staying put meant building permanent structures instead of temporary camps. And permanent structures meant, for the first time in the entire history of our species, walls, solid ones, the kind you couldn't see through. And once you have a wall, you can have a doorway, and once you have a doorway, you can have a thing that covers it. For the first time, a human could step into a room and shut out every other human alive. Let that sink in. The single most ordinary feature of your home, a door you can close, is a technology younger than the domestication of wheat. But even then, privacy was a luxury good. Only the wealthy had separate rooms. For thousands of years after the first walls went up, ordinary people still lived their whole lives in one-room homes with the entire family. Privacy as a thing everyone has, a thing you expect, a thing you'd be outraged to lose, that's the development of just the last few hundred years. In the long arc of being human, total personal privacy is so new the paint is still wet. And here's the part that's genuinely hard for us to get our heads around, sitting in our private rooms behind our closed doors. Ancient humans might not have wanted privacy the way we want it. There's a real chance the thing we treasure most would have struck them as a punishment. The anthropologist Colin Turnbull spent years living among the Mbuti people in the rainforests of Central Africa. He noticed something that stuck with him. They had no word for privacy. Not because they lacked the vocabulary, but because the concept of needing to be alone simply wasn't a thing a person would want. To them, being alone didn't mean peace. It meant being separated from the group, which meant being unprotected, exposed, vulnerable. For almost the entire human story, solitude wasn't a spa day. It was a genuine danger. A person alone was a person something could pick off. The psychologist Erich Fromm argued that the very need for privacy is a symptom of individualism, of a culture where your identity lives inside you as a single, separate self. But for most of human history, identity didn't work that way. Who you were was your role in the group. You were someone's daughter, someone's hunting partner, the one who was good with the children, the one who knew where the water was. Pull you out of the group and you didn't become free. You became no one. Being alone wasn't restful. It was an existential threat, which sets up the cruelest little irony in this whole story. We won. We got everything they couldn't have. You can close a door and vanish. You can live alone in an apartment and go days without a single person seeing your face. You have achieved a quantity and quality of privacy that would have been literally unimaginable to every human who lived before about 10,000 years ago. And we are, by basically every measure we have, lonelier than humans have ever been. Loneliness is now discussed by doctors as a public health crisis, something that damages the body comparably to smoking. We engineered a world with all the privacy anyone could ever want, and a startling number of us are quietly miserable inside it. So here's the real answer to how did ancient humans have privacy? They didn't have it the way you have it, through walls and doors and physical separation. They built it out of something else entirely: timing, distance, and a shared, unspoken agreement to look away at the right moments. Invisible boundaries drawn in the air between people who were always together. And mostly, they didn't crave the alternative, because their sense of self was wired into the group in a way ours simply isn't anymore. Then agriculture handed us the wall, and we have spent 10,000 years building that wall higher and higher and higher, from the shared room to the private bedroom to the solo apartment to the screen we each stare into alone, in the same house, in separate rooms. For 290,000 years, a human being was almost never truly alone. It would have terrified them. And the strangest possibility in all of this is that they were onto something we forgot. We invented the wall to keep the cold and the danger out. We just didn't notice it was also keeping everyone else out too.